I was disgusted. And if I can make one point, this was done in what's called a freestyle match. So what people are used to in high schools is called college, but then there's an international style contested in the Olympics. That's freestyle and Greco-Roman, but it's very relevant because the only people that do freestyle and Greco-Roman, it's a lot smaller community. Those are your hardcore wrestlers. Those are ones that really have a goal that are doing it in the offseason. So it was more of a surprise to see a young man that has goals and has this level of experience to behave that way. Quite possibly the most important part of wrestling, I say this as a former wrestler and a current coach, is the shaking of hands. We have a dispute, but we settle it here. We walk away and it's over. It was a very surprising thing to see him behave this way.
Is it true that there's actually a connection between one of the coaches and yourself as well?
The young man that got hit is coached by Justin Perch out of Illinois, who's an alumni from the University of Oregon, where I went. The young man that got hit is okay, and I have to bring this to you. I've seen a lot of punches in wrestling. I've been on both sides of this myself. This was an oddly hard punch. Like this kid turned out that he had a natural power. He went to shake hands, which took defenses away from his opponent. He came up at him. I mean, it's a really big deal. And I got to bring up one point because wrestling, as much as it's the toughest sport, it is the first one that will cave. If they get pressure put on them to ban this kid for life, they will. And I just share with you the other side of the coin, which is that would be the easy way out. Wrestling is the most difficult sport you could do. If you have a problem, if you have a young man that needs discipline, keep him in the room and letting these things work themselves out. I would just encourage that. And I'll tell you, the sport of wrestling, which I love, is filled with wimps. It's the first time ever TMZ's done a piece on it since Rulon Gardner's come back. It's the first time in history that Dave Portnoy has tweeted about it. And I promise you, our leaders in wrestling will not know how to handle this. They will buckle faster than anybody.
What would you do to the kid then? You seem like you think he needs wrestling.
I would tell you as a coach, the worst thing that a young man should have is free time. You bring in people that have this with inside them. You teach them a skill and send them home tired. It's extremely important. It's probably one of the reasons that his parents got him enrolled and enlisted in something like wrestling in the first place. You can't behave like this. This is a terrible action. Of course you need classes. Of course you need some explanation. But to kick the kid out and have him just roaming the streets and doing something else, I think should be given a real consideration. This was a terrible moment, but it could also be a teachable moment.
And what would you say to the kid that was sucker punched? He seems like he's doing okay. He's still wrestling with a mask. What would you say to him?
Well, and I would love to get his opinion on this. Perhaps he forgives the guy. Perhaps there's a backstory. Perhaps he's done that himself. Maybe he was to tell the truth and say, hey, I've been frustrated myself. I was in practice. I didn't get caught on video and put on TMZ, but I've thrown punches too. It's the wrong thing to do. There's other ways to settle your aggression. I mean, those conversations should be very real. I don't want the young man judged for his whole life because of 5 seconds that slipped out on the internet. We don't know the rest of the story. For sure, it was a terrible action, but to ban a kid for life, I think there's a discussion that at least deserves to be had.
Have you talked to Justin? Or are you going to try to get in touch with him?
No, I was going to reach out to Justin, but he had said something through the media just about his own wrestler, said how tough the kid was. The kid's already back to practice, said that he's going to wrestle, but it's going to be under a face mask for a little bit. I mean, those things are very serious. And you know, I would just share with you without knowing, it's likely has gone both ways. The gentleman that you saw get hit likely has lost his temper before too. And maybe it was in practice. Maybe he didn't hit quite as hard. Maybe it wasn't caught and showcased to the world. These are very normal things in wrestling. And you'd be surprised, but wrestlers tend to forgive other wrestlers. And I'll bet if you ask that kid that was hit what he wants to see happen, he does not tell you ban that kid or put him in jail. I'll bet you I'm right.